Crack-a-lackin', you amazing people of planet Earth. I'm Jake the Ashen Hollow. This video is going to be a little bit different than my usual lore videos. Over the months of doing this, I've had hundreds, maybe even thousands of awesome conversations with you guys, though admittedly some didn't go quite as planned. You'll know that applies to you if you can't comment on this video. Anyways, I've noticed some people bring up certain things to provide with their points that aren't necessarily true to the game, so this video will be covering common misconceptions in the lore of Dark Souls. So let's start with what I think is the most popular misconception. The Firstborn was banished because he lost the annals of history. This misconception is brought up due to a slight mistranslation on the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn. That says, but his foolishness led to a loss of the annals and rescinding of his deific status. Basically, what this was meant to say is exactly what the Sunlight Medal says. The symbol represents Lord Gwen's firstborn, who lost his deity status and was expunged from the annals. Annals, for those of you who don't know, is simply just recorded history. So if you will, just imagine a really big-ass history book. The Firstborn losing the annals themselves just wouldn't make sense, as we'd probably know very little about the past if he did, but he himself was lost from the annals, meaning they essentially erased him from history, which makes a lot more sense, especially considering now we know the thing that they likely viewed as his foolishness was siding with the dragons, not losing a history book. Even Griggs of Vilheim mentions being worried that the annals of history will paint Logan in a negative light. They're not lost. Now let's continue this list in no particular order. Number 2. The Witch of Izalith is the Bed of Chaos. Now I know I myself have had a few theories regarding the witch, but this is neither against or in defense of those theories, just a non-biased perspective. On nearly all descriptions of the Witch of Izalith, and even the ones including her daughter, it consistently says things such as the witch was consumed by chaos, or that the witch gave birth to the Bed of Chaos, or that she was engulfed by chaos. Never once that she became the Bed of Chaos. It's quite persistent and specific that she birthed it. Now, whether you want to believe that she escaped, or that the chaos itself killed her is up to you, but the Bed of Chaos is not actually the witch. In fact, it was there for some time until the witch herself and her daughters lost control of it. We receive her Lord Soul from it due to her using it in an attempt to recreate the First Flame, or perhaps we get it because she did die. The deciding is up to you, just clearing things up here. Number 3. Priscilla was imprisoned in the Painted World. Priscilla was not, in fact, a prisoner in the Painted World. The clues don't suggest that at all. This is one of those things that I'm not sure how it became such a popularized opinion. Sure, her soul says trapped inside the Painted World, but trap definitely has more than one meaning. The doll itself says there was once an abomination who had no place in this world. She clutched this doll tightly and eventually was drawn into a cold and lonely painted world. That definitely doesn't sound like an imprisonment. The painting guardians themselves are even guarding the entrance of the painting, not guarding it as in waiting to see if Priscilla tries to escape. They're guarding it from people getting in. Even the dagger cut from her tail has a wielded style similar to the painting guardians. Priscilla is the antithesis of all life, thus she fled to the Painted World to save her own life. She's trapped there because if she leaves, she'll likely be hunted. Seems pretty cut and dry. Alright, so let's call this one number 4 and 5, the gender identity crisis. The Butchers of the Depths? Yeah, these are women, commonly thought to be men because of the description of the sack they wear on their head labels them as man-eaters, but everyone just ran with man. Laurentius, when you save him, says, "She'll have me for lunch, and I would have been her supper." Then there's the mysterious Ocelot. Yeah, he's a boy. A lot of people kept trying to tell me that Yorshka was Ocelot, but his own father says this, "Well, I will not give him up, for he is all that I have." Him and he. Good enough for me. Let's keep that cleared up. Moving on. Number 6. There's never been an Age of Dark. A lot of people think that there's never actually been an Age of Dark and we've been in the Age of Fire non-stop. That isn't quite true. Koth tells us that the flames did indeed fade and that only dark remained and that thus began the Age of Dark. But Gwen trembled at the dark and threw himself onto the fire to restart his Age of Fire. Number 7. Solaire could still be the Firstborn. You'd be surprised how many times I still hear this. No. Just no. A million times no. Please just stop. Number 8. Basilisk's Eyes. These big balls of shit aren't actually their eyes. Their eyes are on the sides of their head, right here. Not really much to do with lore, but still interesting. Number 9. Ornstein died in Dark Souls 1. Not quite. I can't explain to you with a certainty what we killed in Dark Souls 1, but it wasn't Ornstein. My money is on that he was an illusion, you know, because of Gwendolyn and shit. Ornstein's armor in Dark Souls 3 says, "In the dragonless age, this knight who long guarded the ruined cathedral left the land in search of the nameless king." Even Smo's hammer says this, "Twisted Greathammer associated with Smo, the last knight to remain at his post guarding the ruined cathedral." So Ornstein left, and Smo was the last to guard the cathedral, aka was the last one there when we arrived. So Ornstein actually being gone and an illusion taking his place in Anor Londo makes a whole lot of sense. Gwendolyn tried to keep everything as it was. The sun, his sister, the Silver Knights, even Ornstein were all illusions to keep Anor Londo seemingly as it was. Number 10. Gwen Exiled the Firstborn. This is another quite popular misconception I've seen and also the most easily debunked. I'll do it in a single item description. Sunlight Blade says, "When the eldest son was stripped of his deific status, he left this on his father's coffin, perhaps as a final farewell." I don't know about you, but I think it'd be pretty difficult to place something on the coffin of a guy who just banished me and is still very much alive, let alone be fond enough of him to do so even if I could find a coffin for a guy still kicking. Just doesn't make sense. Number 11. There was no Furtive Pygmy. This is a more recent misconception. We know the Ringed City was ruled by the Pygmy Lords using the power of the Dark Soul. I'm unsure why that automatically makes people assume there still wasn't a singular Pygmy to originally find the Dark Soul and then share it. The opening cinematic in Dark Souls 1 certainly depicts to us that a single person found the Dark Soul. The fact that there are now several Pygmy Lords who share and rule through the Dark Soul doesn't mean there wasn't a Furtive Pygmy whose mysterious identity will continue to haunt us all. Velka! Number 12. Time being convoluted is only an excuse to have multiplayer. I've seen this one a whole lot, people brushing off time being convoluted as only a multiplayer mechanic, but that's simply not true. Play through the game in offline mode and you'll see that that isn't true. There are story-driven NPC invasions in our world. Kirk, who is dead behind an illusory wall at the time of invading us, continues to invade us to pillage our humanity for his mistress. It isn't an online mechanic. We fight several NPCs that don't invade us, just for the sake of having to fight an NPC. There's the Daughter of Chaos and Izalith. We fight Oscar, Solaire, Laurentius, the Crestfallen Warrior after they all go hollow. So saying these NPCs invade us just to fight an NPC doesn't make sense, because we don't have to be invaded to fight them. Them invading our timeline is a part of our story and a part of their story. Even in Dark Souls 3, we can defeat Aldrich, then be summoned by Henri as a part of her storyline, and completely optional, and kill Aldrich again in her timeline. I don't like to see people shrug off an integral part of the story as simply a mechanic. Sure, it goes hand in hand perfectly for allowing multiplayer gameplay to happen, but that isn't the only reason behind it. Time is convoluted. It's that simple. Number 13. Havel was locked away by Gwen. We know Havel was locked away by a dear friend, and everyone has assumed that friend was Gwen, but the only thing we know about Havel and Gwen is that they were battlefield compatriots, and compatriot means basically they're from the same country. I don't know how that correlates to dear friend. In fact, Havel was human. Gwen was known for manipulating and not giving a shit about humans. He probably didn't really give Havel much mind, let alone give a shit enough to lock him away for his own good. The Sacred Oath miracle talks about a brave dragon slayer who served both the Firstborn and Ornstein. This dragon slayer is very likely to be Havel, since in Archdragon Peak, where we find the Firstborn, we find things associated both with Ornstein and Havel. They were probably the original Three Musketeers, and either of them make much better candidates for being dear friends to Havel. In the Ringed City, we're invaded by a Silver Knight named Leto, who in the description for his hammer is known to be close friend of Havel. All of these fit the bill way better than Gwen. Gwen never fit the bill. Number 14. The Tale of the Abyss Walker is about Artorias. Now this one is a little controversial. The Tale of the Abyss Walker does actually start off being about Artorias, but it ends with it being about the Chosen Undead. When we're taken into the past to Ulusil by Manus, we find an Artorias who has failed. Yet, we go on to stop the spread of the Abyss by defeating Manus ourselves, but as we know, all of the credit went to Artorias, and the legend of the Abyss Walker was born out of half-truths. Well, that's all the misconceptions I can think of for now. If there's ever a handful more of these, I'll be sure to try and shed some more light on them in another video. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I helped clear up some things for you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and of course find all the links to my social media in the description. My Twitter if you want to see some sick tweets and get updates on things that are going on, my Patreon if you've ever felt like supporting this channel even further, and my Twitch if you want to hang out when I live stream. Take care everyone, and have a great morning, evening, night, wherever it is you reside. Until next time.